Hi, my name is Kenny Nguyen, and this is my reflection video for Fieldwork at Point Loma Nazarene. This past month, I went to St. Madeline's Sophie Center. It was located in El Cajon and helped serve individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. I have to admit, when I first started this fieldwork, I was a little bit nervous and apprehensive because this was my first time working with this population, especially for a long period of time. I often had a preconceived stereotype where all these individuals, they're dependent, they need total assistance, they need help. That, but the more I got to know them, the more I found that those stereotypes and those first initial thoughts were completely wrong and refuted. Most of these individuals, right? Yeah, they can hold a conversation. They have to ask me how I am, why am I here, who am I. They're also able to do certain occupations by themselves. For example, I thought this lady who needs to be completely dependent, she happened to just walk to the bathroom by herself without anyone telling her, and that was something that was really eye-opening, that helped change my perspective. The content that my OT coursework I found to be most prominent in this fieldwork was actually group process. There's two aspects to it. The first is that I observed how there was different leadership styles in the field work. For the lower cognitive functioning clients, like in BMOD or ADC, the supervisors often use directed leadership, where they kind of tell the client what to do or they do it for the client. But for higher cognitive functioning, it was more of a facilitated leadership, where if there was a client who wanted to do something, and the supervisor said, "Okay, you can do it," and they just watched the client do something, and they offered tips and advice so on how the client can achieve this goal better. And then the second thing I also noticed was how some of the group process interventions was actually in this field work. This week I went to St. Madeline's Sophie's Gallery, where there were a couple clients who were actually doing mosaic paintings, and they're putting mosaic drawings. They're actually also painting stuff, and that's something that we did in group process. So I found it to be really neat how group process ties heavily into field work. And the more I observed, the more I shadowed in Sophie Center, the more I started to develop a better therapeutic use of self. I started, whenever a client started talking to me about their experience, I kind of try to share my own personal experience so that we can I can get to know them better. I started to be an active listener by actually listening to them and then digesting what they're saying before speaking. And I demonstrated empathy. And some clients, they really couldn't communicate well. It was hard for me to hear. It's hard because sometimes they mumbled, so I had to be adaptive and try to adapt my communication so that we both can understand each other. And like I said, as I went through the whole field work, I found that my emotional intelligence definitely improved. I did an assessment where I found that there was an area of improvement that needed to be developed. That was more like social cues and social awareness. I tend to be very blunt and not as empathetic. And sometimes when a person is speaking, I try to think of a comeback, or I try to wait until they finish their turn before abruptly finishing it. So what I did was, as I went through Sophie Center, I kind of developed my more communication skills by having a better posture, by being more actively listening, by repeating and validating what they're saying. And as time went on, I slowly became more confident in my communication skills. So overall, I would say that this viewer experience definitely impacted my professional identity, because it taught me the importance of attendance. I wanted to be there on time. I did not want to be late. It taught me how to have better communication skills by having me exposed to individuals with different cognitive levels and trying to adapt to their communication style so that we both can understand each other. And finally, I found that my emotional intelligence definitely improved because I showed more better awareness of social cues. So overall, I would say that I had a good learning experience at St. Madeline's Sophie Center.